So welcome to this episode of Crap No One Tells You. With me today is Justin.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're going to be talking about some of the crap no one tells you about Medicare, Medicaid.
Yes, I'm probably starting a business too.
And so we'll get into that too. So let's start with a basic question.
Okay.
What is some crap no one tells you about Medicare or Medicaid?
Medicare. So mainly I focus on Medicare.
Medicare, got it.
Right. So there's two. It's confusing, like everything. They add the names that make them sound exactly the same. Medicaid is actually state-funded, separate program. Medicare is federal. So
you focus on Medicare.
Yes. Now I do help people with the Medicaid, but they also have to be eligible for Medicare. So they call those dual special needs plans. So basically, like I said, it gets complicated. It kind of takes the Medicaid and the Medicare and combines it into a single plan.
Got it.
So it's really good for the person.
Got
but
it.
It's just confusing as anything to try to explain, and especially when they make the names very similar.
So I see commercials for this all the time on TV.
Right.
It's like pick your plan, A, B, C, H, whatever.
Every letter of the alphabet.
Right. So someone that, like, health insurance by itself is complicated enough.
Right.
So this seems like it would be even more complicated because now you have variables like income and like all kinds of things that come into this, right?
Yes. That's where I come into play.
Got
So
it.
that's what keeps me in business is that
Okay.
it's actually complicated. Now, it didn't obviously start out that complicated. If you've seen that red and blue Medicare card, that's how it started, just A and B.
Got it.
But as the program progressed, they realized there were gaps in the program, areas that weren't covered. So that's where those Medigap plans come into play because they're actually filling in those gaps that original Medicare didn't cover for the person.
And that's done by the federal government as well?
No, so those are actually done by private insurance carriers.
Okay.
Now, they don't have free reign to do whatever they want. Medicare is very strict. Actually, it's very regulated. It's insane. I have to take a test every year that I have to get 90% or higher. Every company I work with, I have to take at least 3 tests for them each year. So it's insanely regulated. So while it is through private insurance carriers, there's a very strict guidelines that they have to follow in offering these plans and they can't just go and do whatever they want, basically.
So run me through a scenario. Okay. Let's say I'm retiring next year. And I used to make, I don't know, call it 80 grand a year.
Okay.
I get full Social Security.
Okay, 65, yep.
Let's assume 65.
65, okay.
Let's make the math simple.
Okay. Yeah, keep it easy.
Okay. How many different options do I have?
Sure. So it's very scenario specific. Okay. So this is usually when I meet with people well before they're even on Medicare because depending on their circumstances, it's going to be completely different. I get people that are like, well, why am I not on this plan, this person on this plan? It's because your circumstances are so different that it doesn't add up. So how you usually go down it is first, okay, you're turning 65. That's when you're eligible first for Medicare. So after you've worked for 10 years, 40 quarters, if you look at your pay stub, you've seen Medicare tax taken out of there. If you've done that for 10 years or 40 quarters, Part A doesn't cost anything. So that's your hospital coverage. Part B has a monthly premium, and that goes up depending on a person's income. So that's the first step is, okay, you're 65. Are you going to keep working? So are you continuing your employment? Do you have a side business that you're working? Are you going to keep working? If you're working for a company, are they going to continue your coverage, health insurance coverage at that company? Because then if that's the case, they do what's called deferring your Medicare. So you're kind of waiting until you're no longer working. They're ready to full retire. So that's the first question is, are you actually going on Medicare yet?
Okay.
So that's kind of, there's people I'll talk to at 65. I won't talk to them again for another 4 or 5 years. The way the economy is going, 6, 7 years at this point, So that's usually the first question. Second question is, okay, you're going on full Medicare. Let's go down that scenario. Is how's your health? What prescriptions are you on? What doctors do you see? What pharmacy do you use? And then taking all those variables in, I first educate them so they know and they can make the proper decision for themselves. So I found that educating my client first saves 1, me a lot of headache later on. 2, they feel more comfortable because they know the decision. It's their decision to make. So they're making a decision based off of the education that they received. And then once they have that, then we can, go forward. Because there's kind of 2 sides of the coin. Some people choose to go on the Medicare Advantage side, which is a little more like traditional health insurance. It saves them money, but there's like an unpredictable aspect that if stuff goes wrong, they could pay co-pays that could add up a lot. The other side is the supplemental side, which that's what I mentioned earlier, that Medigap that fills in the gap Medicare doesn't. And it's probably getting more confusing as I'm going down. That's why I was just an appointment yesterday. I was literally sat there for an hour and a half, and they're not retiring from the county until May 2023.
Right.
So I've given them a lot to think about.
You're like six months in advance.
And the second they walk out the door, I got a call about 5 minutes later with another question. So yeah, it's complicated, but I spend a lot of time with my clients each year. You know, I consider my clients for life, basically.
Okay.
I see there's a question.
Yeah, that was, yes. So, okay. I don't even know where to start on this one.
Sure.
First of all, how did you get into this?
Good question. Yes, because I'm 33 now.
Okay.
33. So it's an odd career choice. So I didn't go to college. You know, I did horrible in school. I was in construction, actually, originally, which it taught me, you know, now that I own a house, it's amazing to have that, you know, because I did cabinetry, I did electrical, I did, you know, jack of all trades, painting, so forth. So, you know, I wasn't making a lot of money then, but now that I have a house, it's paid off in dividends, you know, being able to do stuff myself. But I actually always into tech, always into computers this whole time since I was a kid. And I actually got hired at the age of, I'd say 21, I think about, into a financial firm because of that. Just, you know, picking up the phone, answering the calls, you know, which I was horrible at first.
What they call office job.
Right. Yes, basically.
Right.
Secretary.
Yes.
So, and I loved it. It got me out of the construction field, which is an awesome career choice. And it got me into something I was passionate about, which was, this is going to sound weird, in front of a computer all day. So everybody has different dreams. But so I started off there and I started, you know, helping him update his office, you know, got certain tech because he was older than me, obviously. Was in the business 30 years or something already by the time I joined. And then I eventually became the office manager there. So I, you know, was handling more of his client's end, the paper end, the back end, calling the insurance companies, dealing with the clients directly. So that kind of, again, started getting me in that appointment mode, I guess you could say. And then he started having me sit on his appointments with him, just to kind of take notes, get the feel for how it worked. You know, there's a lot that goes into it. So just kind of learning it. And something that kept popping up time and time again is, okay, you know, a lot of his clients are wealthy, self-employed individuals. They had their own business, and they're paying for their own health insurance. And if you're, you know, 64, 63, paying for your own, you're looking at, and good health insurance, you're looking at a good chunk of money each month.
Oh, yeah.
So the same question was, okay, great. I'm able to retire. I have my funds. I can live the life I want, the life I've worked 30 years for. I can finally do that. But what about my health insurance? You know, that's $1,600 a month is a huge chunk out of a retirement account, especially if you figure in the interest that you can make off that if you kept that in your investments.
Correct.
It's a good, yes.
It's a nice chunk of change, right?
So I'm sitting there, I'm hearing this question over and over again, and, you know, I start hearing about Medicare and how that works, and people are amazed. You know, there's some people don't like the idea of Medicare. They think it's a bad program. I personally think for what it is, it's a good program. If I could be on it, I would. And what a lot of people were shocked was they were able to get way better coverage than they had paying that, let's just say $1,600 a month for the personal, and it was way cheaper too. So suddenly that fear of retiring, of paying for their insurance completely went away. So that's the first year how I started, was I just was assisting his clients, assisting his book of business, and then year 2 hit. And it was, okay, I've already assisted his clients, I've already gone through his book of business, what now? And that's what kind of got the ball rolling, was I had to start looking outside of that, which, you know, I still help him. He's a great guy. He's taught me everything in the insurance industry I know, in the financial market, you know, everything in the office setting. I owe a lot to him. And being able to then that year 2 figure, okay, how do I start looking elsewhere? You know, so that's what kind of got the ball rolling, how I got into it. And then, you know, I think I'm at year 5 or 6 now. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
moving along.
Yeah, it's been going good. I do enjoy it. I get to work on a computer. A lot of it's remote. I still get that person-to-person contact, whether in-person appointments or remote. So
it sounds like it's a lot of education, though. Like a lot of one-on-one
just a little.
time.
Yes. This time of year 2, I spend, like I said, I consider my clients for life. I spend a lot of time with each of them. I have a client that I had actually from Latip for 2 or 3 years. We just spent a half hour the other day on the phone. He's already set up. It was just kind of going over scenarios, going over questions and so forth. So yeah, a lot of education, a lot of time.
So really, one of the things you have to people need to be brutally honest with you, right?
Yes, we get personal.
Right, like
yeah.
I'm having these pains and I don't know what they are.
I'm on this prescription.
Right,
there's prescriptions for everything.
Correct. So it's really a matter of evaluating where you are physically and being upfront and honest
Right.
about it, and then making the decision
Right.
kind of from there.
Right.
Right. Because it's not just a financial decision. It's
Right.
also
That's just a piece.
Right,
You got the health, you got the doctors, you got the prescriptions.
So are doctors limited by, like, if I had a doctor and now I retire and then my doctor may no longer be covered, like,
So I've actually very rarely run into that. Most doctors now do accept Medicare.
Okay.
I've always said it would almost be like kind of career suicide not to accept Medicare because it's just such a huge health program now. I mean, you'd be alienating people 65 and older from your services.
which are the vast majority of people that
Right.
see doctors.
Right. So the biggest thing is when somebody's on a Medicare Advantage plan, just making sure that that plan their doctor accepts. So it takes me 5 minutes. I look it up, make sure that's the case.
Okay.
So yeah, usually your doctors, that's not an issue. Very rarely.
So it sounds like you had a really good mentor when
Yes.
you
Very good.
started doing this.
Yes.
Which I don't think people fully appreciate the value of.
Everybody needs a mentor. Anybody that's self-made, so to speak, they've had somebody that's helped them, usually.
Usually, yes. So if someone was going to start out in this field and they were going to get into, no, first of all, before I get to that question,
Okay.
one of the things that surprised me is your customers don't actually pay for your service.
No, right, correct. I cannot charge. Like I said earlier, Medicare
Right.
is very regulated.
The first time you said that, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, so I might have to sit with someone for 3 hours, and
Yeah, and you
how
might never see a dime.
how am I going to get paid? Right.
And sometimes it's not 6 months until like I said, I met with somebody that's not retiring until May 2023 yesterday. It's already spent an hour and a half,
And they may or may not.
and they may not use me, which is fine.
Right.
There's no string attached. I provide my service, I provide my education, and what they choose to do at the end of the day. And I have people that call me after they haven't used me, and they want to use me now.
Right.
So it's no strings attached.
It's interesting. So anyway, back to so when you first started, you had to, I'm assuming, set up your own entities, and because you did this on your own, right?
Yeah.
Like you
no
didn't do this
college.
as part of,
I had no idea what I was doing.
and you didn't do this as part of his firm. You
No,
literally
separate.
set up
Yes.
your own.
Yes, separate.
So how was that process?
Learning, educational. Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing on the business side. I mean, I listen to audiobooks, I read, YouTube. I consume any type of information I can, and then I evaluate if it's good information or not afterwards. So I check multiple sources, and then I kind of come to a conclusion of what I feel from those multiple sources. But yeah, I had no idea. Actually, the LLC, getting that set up, I tried doing it on my own. I actually went to Mike Turkani because I was like, I want to, this isn't my specialty. This is yours.
Right.
So that was really the biggest thing I had trouble learning was to delegate stuff, to spend that money out of your own pocket that you feel you could do yourself, but then you start adding in your time. If you have that knowledgeable resource, if you make a mistake, it can start snowballing. So that was probably one of the hardest things I had to learn and I'm still learning that, is to delegate that stuff. I used to do all my marketing, all that kind of stuff.
When to spend the money
Yes.
rather than the time.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's one of the lessons that a lot of entrepreneurs and startups have a hard time with.
Yeah, I still do. I still want to sit there and do it myself.
Everybody does at some level,
Yes.
right? Which is fascinating because I asked a bunch of entrepreneurs the other day, like, what is the one thing you would never give up in your business, right? And it was funny because I was assuming that it was, the idea stages or like whatever it was that made them start.
Yeah.
But that wasn't always the case, right? So I'm assuming for you, the part you would never give up is the interaction.
Yeah, it's actually, I was just thinking that. It's funny you said that. Because I've been growing more and more, and I'm not getting overworked, but I want to service my clients well. And the more clients you have, you want to make sure you're keeping up with that servicing aspect. And yeah, the more I've been thinking is, okay, if I bring another agent on, referring people that trust me, that, I've helped to somebody else to do that. Yes, that's going to be a hard one. The gear is already turning on
Right.
that one.
And it's funny because like the first time, let's say you weren't doing what you're doing, you're selling shoes.
Right.
Right. Hiring that first salesperson that now has to represent you as you almost, but still being themselves is, to me, is one of those like, well, that's a leap of faith,
Yes.
right? Because now my reputation is on the line for whatever someone else may say.
Right.
Which is often why I think people have a hard time handing that part off.
Yes, and I will.
I will. The paperwork's easy,
Yes.
right? Like, because you can always double check it.
Yeah, and a lot of it's electronic now, so
Right.
if you make a mistake, you
can go fix it.
Yeah, or you just weren't paying attention. Your focus was not on that, so it's not like you could do a spelling error or check the wrong box paper-wise anymore. It's it's pretty laid out. It won't let you proceed so far if you make a mistake and so forth.
So it's self-checked.
It should be, yes.
Okay. So one of the things you mentioned earlier was you had to do, it sounded like multiple tests.
Yes, every year.
Every year.
Yes.
So that's the federal government test. Are those also private insurance tests? Or
So you have first what's called the AHIP test, which is your fraud, waste, abuse test. That's kind of an overview test each year. So it's about 50 questions. You have to study a guide ahead of time each year. You have, I think, 2 hours to take the test, and they want a 90% or higher. You get 3 attempts. I've never gone past that 3 attempts, but I heard it's not good.
Okay.
Your book of business could be in trouble once,
Got
So I think I've only ever, when I first started, it took me to my second attempt. Since then, I've made sure to get it on the first attempt. But yeah, so that's the AHIP. That's like a broad test. So that's put together by CMS, I believe, which is kind of the regulators of Medicare. Once you pass that, then you can go to the private insurance carriers and take those existing tests. So then each insurance carrier, to be able to offer their products, is an annual test to make sure you understand the new changes to their plans, how their company works, their rules or regulations, and kind of just make sure it's almost like a repeat of that first test you took to make sure you actually understand it for that company.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And
I was horrible at tests in school.
Right. And how many insurance companies are there?
There's a lot. So I'm a broker. So what that means is I don't work for one insurance carrier. I guess you can almost say like a secret shopper for the person.
Right.
I look to see which company, which plan, because each company has multiple plans inside of them. So I look to see which company and then which plan makes the most sense for a given individual.
But you may have to take, if you want to represent 5 insurance companies, you might have to take 5 tests on top of the federal one.
Yes. And each one of those companies has about 3 tests plus.
So you could be taking...
I take about 15 plus tests a year just for this.
Every year?
Yes, 90% or higher every test. It's September, I put my head on the computer screen and just...
That's it.
Yep.
That's what you do.
Yep. Test,
for a full month.
And it's funny because, like I said, I was horrible at taking tests in school. I've actually learned from this how to be good at test taking. Because I never understood the thought process behind tests. I always struggled with that. The scenarios didn't make sense to me. I'm more of a visual learner.
Right.
So I've literally trained myself how to understand tests a lot better now. So something that I was horrible at, a weakness, is now a strength for me from that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating that, so you're taking, let's just say you're taking 15 tests a year. And yet the people that are the consumer of the product are basically supposed to just pick this off of a piece of paper?
Yes and no. They get they are provided with material. So when they sign up for Medicare, they get a packet in the mail. And the issue is, the amount of time I put in expecting somebody to put that time in while they're still working, while they're trying to get their retirement, where that's kind of where the issue comes into play, is them putting that amount of time in. And they figure this is something I've been doing for 5 years now. They have to do that all in a few months to try to learn. Job security.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty solid job security. Do most people actually seek out someone like you, or are there a ton of people that just kind of make their selection and have really no clue what they're doing? I mean,
no, so far I have to say most people do speak with me first for that coverage.
So in general, this is something people will seek out to find someone to work with.
Definitely. And I've even had people, they seek me out, they get my ideas, they ask me what plan to go on, I tell them, and they go sign up themselves, which it's part of the business.
Right.
Which is fine. They'll even straight up tell me, like, oh yeah, thank you for that suggestion on that plan. I went and, and signed up for it, called them and signed up directly. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
So if they sign up through someone like you, then you take care of the sign-up process?
Yes. So I assist them from the beginning.
Got
and,
it.
Helping them understand Medicare, helping them get, I give them the phone number, the website link, and so forth to sign up for that initial step, that A and B on Medicare. Walk them through that process, keep up to date. They'll have questions if they're doing it online. They'll call me and so forth. And then, I assist them basically through the whole process. And
so you're not the one physically typing in their information. That is
as the
done
second
by
part,
them.
yes.
Okay.
So they sign up for the A and B on their own usually. I usually like to have them just because there's personal information with that. There's on the federal government. And then once that step's completed, they give me the provided information that I need. I take the bare minimum, and then I put that into the application for them and submit it and follow up with it and make sure it's all processed properly.
Nice. So 5 years. That's what you've been doing this.
Yeah, I'd say about 5 to 6. Yep.
Is there anything you would have done differently looking back?
There's always stuff that obviously you'd change and so forth. I think the biggest thing is just the knowledge aspect. I'm 30.
Knowledge comes with experience.
Right, it comes with time. Right. Obviously, there's maybe pushed harder certain years, or looked at different avenues. Hindsight, always, if I did it this way, I'd be 3 years into this marketing aspect, and whereas I'm just starting now. So yeah, there's definitely stuff I would have on maybe the marketing side wanted to start sooner.
Okay.
But I think the weirdest thing that it's the stuff nobody tells, crap no one tells you,
right?
Is let's just say we'll say I'm 30. Okay. 5 years from now, I'm 35. There's changes in your life, but it's not, the end of the world changes. You might have job changes, a kid, house, so forth. But when somebody's 65, 5 years, and now they're 70, that's a big,
it's pretty drastic.
And a lot happens then. So, people I met with when they were 65 or even 70, and now, they're age. So nobody prepares you for, the health changes that people go through, the circumstances and so forth. So that's kind of the one thing that took me by surprise was, the first year you didn't experience that, second year not so much. But then, when you're looking at 5 years, that 75 to 80 jump and so forth, a lot changes. So yeah, that's definitely been an eye opener. It's made me think about my own health. It's, it's made me try to be healthier and so forth. So yeah, it's
interesting because I deal with people that are all over, like industry wise, and deal with people on all levels. Like I have people that deal with seniors like you, and then I have clients that deal with that daycare centers, right? Which are the other end of the spectrum. But it's interesting because if you look at the age from about 25 to 55, there are no major differences per se, right? Like it's not drastic. Whether you're talking to a 35-year-old or a 40-year-old, there's nothing.
Right.
But when you're talking at the beginning, talking to a 10-year-old versus a 15-year-old, right? It's
half their
huge,
life.
right? And it's interesting because on the other end of the spectrum where you're talking, because we had someone that does helps people age in place, for example.
Okay.
And she said one of the hardest things to explain to people is how quickly you could decline.
Right. Yeah.
And how you
Overnight,
have to,
yep.
like how you have to start preparing for that now.
Yeah. A lot of people don't want to admit, they don't want to talk about it.
Nobody does,
which is understandable.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to get older.
Right.
But it's fascinating because what you're saying is, because you've now been around 5 years in the business, the clients you took on that may have been 65 when you took them on, or 70.
Right.
Like having to watch them go through this process.
Like I said, I keep in touch with them every year too. So, some years, you call them, it's been great, because I usually touch base around September each year because that's when the annual enrollment period starts. And other times you call in and it's unfortunately not the best conversation, but it's one you have to have with them. So yeah, it's been eye-opening, definitely.
It's got to be rough.
It can be a little, yeah. But,
like if they're having a bad year, because like when you have a bad year at 75, it's normally a really bad year, right? Like it's not minor.
Right. And there's only so much I can do. I mean, I'm only helping on the insurance, and, I can listen to them, I talk to them, I try to, be as human as possible in speaking to them, understanding their circumstances.
But it's an incredibly personal conversation.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Like, incredibly.
Yes.
Like they have to tell you everything that they went through pretty much in order for you to.
Right. I mean, some people are more private than others. Obviously, they'll give you just the information you need to help them on the insurance side. And other people are open books. They, go from A to Z about what they've been through in the last year. So yeah, it depends on the client or the individual, but yeah, it can be a lot.
So how do you prepare for that?
You don't. You just kind of pick up the phone and hope that it's a good conversation. Yeah, that's all you can do.
So give me an example or if you can give me an example. Someone that tried to do it on their own, didn't talk to someone.
Right.
And then they have the epiphany of going, oh, this isn't working.
Right.
And they pick up the phone and call you. Like, what are some common scenarios where someone may have decided, oh, I'm just going to go in and pick A or B. I'm going to read the pamphlet or the brochure that they sent me, and I'm just going to take a guess.
Right.
Right? Because honestly, I've seen those brochures, and yes, they are thorough.
But you're still making the decision yourself.
You're still making the decision. And they're not really that explanatory from what I've read so far, right? Because I know people that have gone through this and they spent like days or weeks trying to study up on this,
right,
only to end up making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Right? So what are some common scenarios where someone has made a wrong decision, so to speak, and then comes to you and goes, can you fix it?
Right. So yeah, there's some scenarios. So the first one might be there's what's called the Part D penalty, which is prescription drugs. If you don't either have qualifying coverage or get it when you turn 65, there's a penalty that stacks. And, it's not the most expensive thing in the world, but it is still a monthly penalty, which, when you're retired, that adds up. And they didn't get the prescription drug coverage when they turned 65. And now, because they didn't need prescriptions at that time. And no matter how much you try to tell them, well, that's amazing that you're 65, you don't need prescriptions. Like, I hope, I'm in the same boat, but you do have to plan that there's a good chance that as you age, you're going to need a prescription. So then they call me maybe when they're 70, 73, they now have very expensive prescriptions. They don't have the prescription plan. They have to wait for that time period to come around when they can join a prescription plan. So they're paying out of pocket during that time.
Wait, so you cannot change your plan in between the two periods.
Right. So for the Part D prescription plan, unless there's a special life circumstance or what they call an SEP, a special enrollment period, it's from October 15th to December 7th that a Medicare beneficiary can change their prescription drug plan, and it goes into effect January 1st. So
and that's good for a year.
That's good for a year, yeah.
So what's a special...
Special enrollment period could be, let's say you move.
No. You said special event, some kind of...
Yeah, special enrollment period.
That's okay. Yeah, that's what it's called.
SEP, okay. Special enrollment period. A special event would be like, say you move out of the planned service area, you then can make that change automatically. If for something happens with the insurance carrier, or you get dropped for some reason, which is very rare, you have a special enrollment period. So there's a bunch of different scenarios that could happen. But
like if you have a heart attack, that does not trigger a special. Okay,
no, most likely not.
Okay, just
there's very scenario specific. Sometimes I try as much as possible to help people, find the period that they qualify for, but it's not, there's not an alternative to everything. Sometimes they just have to wait.
So you could have someone that selected the Plan D. Now they're getting penalized every month.
Yeah, they did not select the Part D.
Oh, did not select it.
Right.
And now they're getting penalized every month.
Once they do join it, yeah, they will start.
So if you did that in February, you're stuck with that for a year.
Right, if you didn't sign up, or
11 months.
Right, or if you picked the wrong plan, so forth.
So there's nothing that can be done until the following
Not unless
October,
you have a special enrollment
right?
period, or you contact your doctor. I mean, you can probably... you might be able to figure something out, go down a rabbit hole, but it can be a very complicated process, and there's no guarantees.
So really, you should talk to someone like you.
Right. It doesn't cost you anything. It'll save you a lot of time, could save you a lot of money,
because
headaches.
Technically, you get paid by the government or the carrier.
Yeah, carrier,
right?
correct. Yeah, and it's a fixed amount, so there's no, if a lot of financial planners, for example, they might get, sent to Hawaii for offering a certain product,
or they get a percentage or whatever.
Right. There's there's zero motivation for me to go with one carrier, or again, because Medicare is very regulated, it's across the board.
So you get a flat rate no matter
what. So it's finding them the plan that makes the most sense, because again, at the end of the day, I'm in the referral business. I want to service them as best as possible, because my hope is that, one, they keep using me, and two, is that they refer me to their friends.
Interesting.
Yes.
So you're regulated?
Very regulated, yes.
You have no guarantee of payment?
Nope.
You have to spend a ton of time with people?
Yeah.
Sounds like a really great business model.
Yeah. It works, though.
Right. Yeah, I know.
If you're willing to put the time and the energy in it, yeah, it does work.
So how long did it take you from the time you started till you were making what you would call a sustainable income, right? Because if you're limited on what you're getting from each client,
right,
it's really a numbers game.
Right.
You have to take on, let's say you get paid, I don't know, for argument's sake, you get paid $5 per client, right? So then it's simple math from that point on, right? You go, okay, so if I want to make $5,000, I need 1,000 clients.
Excel spreadsheets.
Right. But in order to service that many clients, you have to make a certain amount of phone calls. You have to make a certain amount of phone calls.
Every year it gets more and more.
Right. So, at what point does this become self-sustainable? How many clients do you need to be able to call this a full-time living?
So when I was starting, they said 500 is kind of the Goldilocks number, I guess you could say. If you have 500 clients, the amount of referrals coming in will replenish, other clients. That it'll keep new clients coming in. It'll give a good chunk of income. It could let you, bring on more people, so forth. So yeah, they say the Goldilocks, I guess, is about 500 you'd want.
So if you would translate that into half an hour spent with every client, that's 250 hours.
You're better at math than me, so.
During September and October primarily,
My
right?
generation needs the calculator.
Right. So 250 hours is 6 weeks worth of 40-hour work weeks.
Yep.
Assuming you don't get
I'm
breaks.
I'm on the phone this time of year all day, yeah.
All day.
Yeah. A lot of phone calls. A lot of and in person, yeah.
That sounds really intense, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, it can be draining, but there's a lot of my clients I've built relationships with, so it's nice to talk to them, hear how their year's been. A lot of them, are living their the retirement life that they're loving. They have a summer home. They are traveling the world and so forth. So it can be very rewarding too. I mean, it can be draining, but it can also be very rewarding. So.
Well, CPAs go through the same thing in February, right?
Right.
Like that's
Yes,
their
that's their
insane 60, 80, 100-hour weeks, right?
And I like it because the way I feel, I have to work 2 to 3 months really hard during the year. I mean, really hard, late nights, early mornings, a lot of driving, a lot of talking. But then the rest of the year, it's a lot more relaxed. So for me, that's a good trade-off. I work really hard 2 or 3 months a year. The rest of the year, I can have more of a relaxed schedule, more relaxed,
So
not be dressed up.
And not be dressed up. Can wear sweatpants and stay
exactly,
home, right?
yeah.
So during the off season, let's call it, which is 9 months, give or take.
Right.
How many hours are you putting in directly into the business or dealing with your customers, whatever?
Yeah, not much. A few hours a day. I mean, I'm helping at that regular time during the year. You're doing 2 things usually. Well, one is obviously you're taking calls from your existing clients if there's an issue, if there's, if they have a change, something like that, they move. So, there's that sprinkled throughout there. But your main things are what's called T65s, which is turning 65.
Right.
So that's people that, they're able to enroll anytime during the year when they're turning 65 during that time frame. So you're helping those throughout the year. Then you're also helping those that, as I mentioned earlier, that were working past 65 that are not retiring. They're ready to go on full Medicare. So you're helping those individuals too. So it's really those 2 groups that you're helping most of the time.
So those are what you would call like new registrations almost.
Right. Brand new. Yep. Just on getting on Medicare. So those you help throughout the year, and they're sprinkled throughout there, so you're a half hour here or there. So it's definitely not as demanding. It's definitely you're not on the phone. Now, I mean, you can be obviously if you're, you push yourself really hard, right? You can, make yourself busy all year if you'd like. But I like that more approach of work really hard, 2 or 3 months a year, still working the rest of the year, but it kind of lets you mentally reset, prepare for it again.
To start all over.
Start over again. Yep. Come September.
So if someone was gonna get into this, what would be your advice to them?
So when I was looking, because I was always looking for a side business to start, I was always looking for various avenues. And finally I was like, I'm sitting here in a financial firm. I need to do something I've been doing for the last 8 years. So first you have to look at your personal, what have you been doing for your career? Can you find something in that career path that you already have knowledge on that there's a need for? Kind of that's like what I did with Medicare. I was already in that environment. I looked to see. So looking at your personal circumstances, and you can also, if your personal circumstances don't line up with doing Medicare, you can also start hitting the books, start watching the videos, start learning first. You have to learn. I mean, if you don't know what you're talking about, one, you could really mess up someone's insurance and their life with that, so just throw as much information at yourself as you can to start. And then once you get that, you need to learn how to speak to people. You need to learn how to talk on the phone. You need to, some people don't realize when you're speaking on the phone, you have to listen for cues in their voice, the changes in their tones, pauses, stutters, fast talking, slow talking. So you have to also learn how to, read people's voices when you're meeting with them in person, read their facial expressions, how they feel. So get good at speaking to individuals, feeling comfortable. When you start taking that educational and combining it with being able to talk to them and being able to relay that too, because you could have it all up here, but you could be horrible at getting it out.
Getting it out.
So you need to get all those stars to align, I guess you could say, and then you can start looking for, clients.
How many tests do you have to pass before you can start? Just the basic 3, or do you have to?
Right. So when I started, I didn't have any clients. A lot of people, they have the luxury of, maybe their parents started their business first, their second, third generation. Getting a business with even 10 clients is a lot better than getting a business with 0 clients. So, you don't have any. So when I first started, I did my main test I was telling you about. I got that passed. And then I went on my first appointment and I drove an hour to their house, sat with them probably for 3 hours, figured out what plan they wanted that would work for them. I had to go back, get set up with that company, with that plan, another probably 2 or 3 hours, do those tests, so forth. Go back, present that plan to them, because obviously I couldn't present information to them ahead of time. I just had to see what worked, get that set up, go back there, get them signed up, come back, offer $70. That's my first client.
Right.
And
so you spent like 10 hours.
Yeah, easily driving an hour for $70.
Right.
Which, at that time I was like, I made $70 on my own, I'll go fill my gas. Now it's a tank of gas.
Comes back to I always tell people, whenever you start a business, do the minimum required in order to make your first sale.
Yeah. Was not an easy client though.
Correct. But like the other work that you did, like you didn't go and test for 10 insurance companies or whatever. Like you did the minimum that you had in order to be able to make the sale.
Yeah, because you have no idea what companies they're going to need.
That still made sense for the client.
Right. So. And yeah, like I said, all for $70. But what was crazy to me was I didn't realize this until maybe a year later. From that first client, it snowballed. They referred me to their friend down the street, and that one first client that I spent 10 hours suddenly, I mean, they had to have supplied me at this point with, I mean, probably close to 20 clients just from that one.
Right.
So it's worth it. If you put that work in there, you will be rewarded. So not always.
No.
But for the most part, you will be rewarded for the work you put in.
So basically the basic things are study for the test, fill yourself with information.
As much as possible, yes.
And then learn how to be a proper communicator.
Right. Yep.
Those armed with those two things,
and you
could start this as a side gig or a side
hustle,
hustle,
that's how I started it. Yep.
And then eventually
strictly a side hustle, yes.
Turn it into a full-time business.
Right. And you also have to understand you're dealing with a lot of different people, a lot of different views, a lot of different opinions, a lot of different conversations that they want to have. You have to really just not let your personal opinions come out. You just have to kind of, go with the flow, because you're going to alienate 50% of your clients, or you're going to upset people once you start giving your opinion, because the chances of your opinion lining with their opinion 500 clients is very rare. So yeah, you need to learn how to speak. You need to learn how to get that information across, and you need to learn how to also not take stuff personal, go with the conversation, go with the flow, not be disruptive with them, and try to assist them as best as possible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
This has been enlightening.
Yeah, me too.
I now know more about this than I ever did before.
Yeah, one other point I just want to mention real quick.
Go for it.
So this is something that kind of blew my mind. People on Medicare, Viagra is not covered. You believe that?
Really?
Yeah, not covered under Medicare.
Interesting.
You would think, because insurance is all about, keeping a person as healthy as possible, right? The less health issues
quality
you have.
of life.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, not covered.
Not covered.
Yeah, I got asked that question a ton of times, and every time I had to break the bad news.
I think that's a good way to end this.
I figured I'd leave you with that one. So
thank you so much for coming in.
Yep, appreciate it, Gummy. Thank you.